Millionaire's daughter wakes up in Morgue and hears something shocking from her fiancé, who came to identify her. A sleek foreign car pulled up in front of the city hospital's morgue, and a tall, young man stepped out. It was clear that he was there because of a tragedy. Dressed in black, his eyes were probably filled with hidden tears behind his dark sunglasses. His demeanor suggested that he had faced a great misfortune. Burying a grandfather was one thing, but someone so young. Yes, the wealthy also cry. Ethan Turner had come to collect the body of his fiancée, Lily, who had recently passed away suddenly and without any known cause. It was no wonder he was so shaken. He could hardly believe that his beloved had died suddenly, almost on the eve of their wedding. He had already made the identification, spoken with the investigator, and answered questions about what might have happened to a young woman who had been so happy and full of life. But what could he know? Being in such despair. Barely holding back tears, he spoke. "This just can't be true. We saw each other the day before. Everything was fine. No, she didn't complain about anything. Only being tired. But lately, she's been frequently tired. She was even planning to see a doctor, but promised to go after the wedding. She wasn't depressed or suicidal." The investigator continued questioning him. "What are you talking about? We were so happy. What am I supposed to do now? You know, I don't care about the cause of Lily's death anymore, because nothing can be fixed," lamented the inconsolable fiancé. Maybe she had enemies. After all, Lily was wealthy, the head of a large fortune, and owned a company. Who could her enemies be? Besides, nothing is missing, no money, no valuables. Everything is in place, except her. Ethan, unable to contain himself, broke down and cried. The investigator realized it was cruel to continue interrogating a man who had suffered such a heavy loss and let him go. The case could be closed. The girl had simply died of heart failure. Sad, but it happens. What can be done? Ethan entered the morgue, which was empty at that moment, and was met by an orderly, a huge figure whose face suggested he had served time in prison. The tattoos on his arms and chest confirmed this. Someone with a different background would hardly take such a job. Ethan greeted the man, realizing they were alone. He wiped away his tears and adopted a businesslike demeanor. "So, where's the body?" he asked. "There's a lot of work," the orderly chuckled. "I've arranged everything as you asked, so you can take your fiancée and do what you want. Bury her in the cemetery if you like." "Did you come alone?" "Yes, alone. Bury her without ceremony. She has no relatives, and friends can remember her however they like. It's your choice if you're not afraid of extra questions." "But wait, what do you mean by bury? We should take care of the burial too. Who else will do it? You got your men here. Just do everything right. I've already bought the plot. The grave is dug. You just need to lower her and cover her well. We know our job, but you'll have to pay both for the work and the silence. Bloodsuckers. I'll pay extra. There's no choice. Just do it quickly to avoid questions, and then take a photo of the grave and send it to me." "Understood. Are you going to say goodbye?" "Get lost. You're used to this, but I can't stand seeing dead bodies. Do it yourself." "Agreed." They resolved the matter, unaware that the deceased, already placed in the coffin, had regained consciousness. She began to feel and hear things as she was being prepared for the funeral, but couldn't be said to have fully returned. She heard everything, understood everything, but couldn't move a finger, make a sound, or take a deep breath. Lily lay as she was placed by indifferent hands, not understanding what was happening. She couldn't move due to the effects of the substances Ethan had poisoned her with. There was no doubt that he did it. There was no one else. Why? The reason was clear: money. This happened when he suggested saying goodbye to the single life. He was sweet and helpful that last night. The white wine had tasted strange, and Ethan insisted she drink it all. "This is the best wine. I bought 3 cases for our wedding. I paid a fortune. Drink up. You'll taste a wonderful aftertaste." She hadn't noticed immediately, but remembered well how Ethan left, not understanding why. He looked at her so strangely after he left. She felt a terrible weakness, numbness in her hands and feet. What had he mixed in? Sleeping pills? Some drug? And what would happen to her now? They were about to bury her. How could that be possible? No, it couldn't be true. She needed to do everything possible to let someone know she was still alive, at least the gravediggers, even if it resulted in her death. The important thing was not to be buried alive. While these thoughts raced through Lily's mind, the orderly sought out those who would be responsible for Lily's burial. The hospital was on the outskirts of the city, with the cemetery right behind it. So, the dead were carried by family members or transported by the staff. In this case, there was no one. "Mark, where are you? Get Andre and start the job. There's a burial to be done." "Andre's not here. He's been drunk for 2 days. How am I supposed to do this alone?" protested the young gravedigger. "Will there be at least some relatives present?" "There won't be anyone. No men, no women, no funeral, just pure pleasure. No one will be around to interfere or give advice, and you'll get double the pay. Think about it. The deceased is young and light. You'll be able to move and bury her alone. Then, take a picture of the grave. Here, I'll give you triple the pay. You're all vultures, real bloodsuckers. Let me help put her on the stretcher and get on with it." Mark wasn't a vulture, though money was an urgent matter for him. Otherwise, a young economics student wouldn't have chosen this job. But he needed to do it when his mother became seriously ill. She begged him not to drop out of school, and he didn't want to either, but Helena needed money for treatment, and he needed to find a job. "What can I do, Mom? All students work part-time," he reassured her, hiding where he worked. The father of a classmate got him the gravedigger job through connections, and Mark accepted, understanding he could earn much more in this position than by putting up posters or washing dishes in a cafe. There were no other options, so he became a gravedigger. The work wasn't for the faint of heart, but Mark had a strong psyche. He tried not to take what happened around him seriously, though some colleagues advised him, "Mark, you won't last long in this job without drinking. That's why we end up drinking, so don't be stubborn. Drink with us." Mark refused, gaining the respect of his colleagues. Why would he drink? He was a student going to graduate and become someone. There was nothing special about the job. Someone had to bury the dead. They couldn't be left in the middle of the road. Others defended him. Mark wasn't afraid of becoming an alcoholic. He never liked alcohol, not for consolation or fun, even though the job was tough, both physically and mentally. And even understanding its necessity, it seemed shameful. What if someone I know sees me? Rumors will start, and my mom will find out. So, he not only changed clothes for work, but also tried to alter his appearance. He bought a thick beard at a theater shop, and when he went to his gloomy job, it brought a certain thrill. Today, one of the staff was off, his partner was drinking, so he had to handle the burial alone. "These are strange funerals," they said. "There's a young woman in the coffin, but no relatives or acquaintances. What to think of that? Maybe she was a very bad person, and no one wanted to know her. Or she was sick, and everyone had been expecting her death for years. Or alone. Strange, sure, but that wasn't his concern. Mark didn't know, and would never know. After pushing the stretcher to the already dug grave, thanks to Andre, who had helped dig it before he started drinking, Mark carefully removed the not-so-heavy coffin and placed it on the ground. There was a faint rustling sound from inside. It seemed that the coffin was too large, and the deceased had slightly moved. "How will I lower her alone?" Mark thought in frustration. Whoever she was, it wasn't right to simply toss her in there. Meanwhile, Lily was desperately trying to signal to the person who was about to bury her alive. She was alive, but she couldn't move, nor separate her stiff lips. She managed to open her eyes, giving her hope that her other limbs would start moving too, as long as it wasn't too late. She was really going to be buried now. Her brain was sending signals to her arms and legs, but they didn't move. It seemed that the fingertips were starting to twitch, but what was the use? The coffin was already being moved, probably about to be pushed into the grave, and that would be the end. Yes, the boards destined to be her eternal bed were tilted, and her body slid inertly against them. Her head hit the lid. What was that? Her throat seemed to awaken, and a faint moan escaped her closed lips, but it was too low to be heard, especially by the man outside who was busy with his task. The dirt and small stones scraped and rustled under the coffin. Then, the coffin fell to the bottom of the grave. The girl's head shook and hit the bottom with a dull thud that awakened Lily. Her mouth finally opened, and she managed to let out a scream that proved she was alive. Mark froze in horror upon hearing the scream from the coffin. I've worked too much. It must be my imagination. The coffin creaked. Luckily, it didn't fall apart, he tried to reassure himself. A corpse, whose death should have been confirmed by doctors, couldn't simply come back to life, and the pathologist must have performed an autopsy. Even so, a chill ran down his spine, and it seemed like the hair on the back of his neck stood on end. He sat on the edge of the grave, catching his breath. Silence. Yes, of course, it was just my imagination. I should see a psychiatrist. I need to bury this quickly and get out of here. Then another, much clearer moan came from below. This couldn't be dismissed as a hallucination. Mark jumped into the grave and asked, "Are you alive?" Knowing how foolish that sounded. There was no coherent response, but the moans spoke for themselves. Mark struggled, breaking his nails to open the coffin lid, and gasped. A young woman looked at him with eyes full of horror and despair. "You are alive," Mark murmured again. "We need to get out of here. You probably need a doctor." He really didn't know what to do, so he suggested the most practical thing. "Let me help you out." "Water," the girl whispered as they emerged. Fortunately, Mark had water with him. He always brought it, knowing it would be hard to find a drink at the cemetery. He brought the bottle to the girl's lips, and she drank eagerly, almost finishing half a liter at once. Mark pulled the bottle away. "You can't drink too much at once. Who did this terrible thing to you?" The girl, after drinking, began to regain her strength, but was in no hurry to answer his questions. She lifted her face, looked up at the clear sky, and closing her eyes, whispered, "What happiness," and let her head fall weakly on Mark's shoulder. "Yes, you're alive," he agreed, confused and not knowing what to do next. "You probably need to go to the hospital." "How did this happen?" "It's simple. Someone wanted to kill me and tried to poison me, but failed. So, let's go to the police." "I don't want to go anywhere. Not to the police, not to the hospital. I don't want them to know I'm alive." Mark noticed that she was still resting her head on his shoulder, not out of affection but weakness. She needed a doctor, and the police needed to be involved. Did she really want to let the attacker go unpunished? "Have you forgiven him?" he asked. "No, I don't want him to get away with it. And he has every chance of doing so," she whispered. "He'll need proof that you died, and then we can act with a clear conscience. A doctor will take samples, find out what was used to poison you, write a report, and the police will open a case. I'm a witness. I'll go to the police with you. You need to see a doctor urgently. It's clear you're not well." He quickly buried the empty coffin, took a photo, and sent it to the boss as proof of the completed job. Now he needed to decide what to do with the girl who had resurrected. Ethan, upon receiving the photo of his fiancé's grave, was elated. He had executed everything brilliantly and perfectly. That young fool instantly believed in his love, and now he could relax. What could be better than marrying the heiress to a substantial fortune, especially since she was young and attractive? There was no denying that. He could have married Lily, taken control of her and her money, and lived a wonderful life. But there were several obstacles, the main one being Maria Reed. He couldn't say he truly loved this woman, but she fascinated him. Ethan felt that with her, he would find happiness. No, she wasn't young and beautiful like Lily. She worked as the head of a department on the estate that belonged to her late father. Of course, her fortune wasn't as large as Lily's, but the prospects were much more appealing. Money was good, of course. No one would argue with that, but money had a way of running out. He himself had been an orphaned heir since a young age, still in his first year of college, and knew very well how quickly money could disappear. He barely finished college when he was practically penniless, selling his possessions. Now that he looked like an adult, it didn't matter. His addiction was incurable and only worsened with age. So, Lily's money would disappear as quickly as his father's. And what would be left? A wife, even if beautiful and loving, wouldn't be loved by him, and she was one of those women who wouldn't be easy to get rid of. Besides, she would undoubtedly start having children immediately, which meant guaranteed extra burdens. With Maria, everything would be different. She knew how to make money and could keep him under strict control. Secretly, Ethan longed for someone to keep him under strict control. Yes, with her, he wouldn't stray. She could get whatever she wanted out of him. This wasn't the sensitive Lily who would cry and plead for forgiveness. Living with someone like Lily would make him want to get involved in anything just to avoid going home. Even during their courtship, it was hard for him to pretend to be in love. He could have taken his time eliminating her, first marrying her and then later, but various circumstances prevented that, the main one being Maria. She seemed to be in love with Ethan and had serious plans for him. She was also very jealous. She didn't consider it a major flaw that her man was apparently courting another girl. On the contrary, she fully supported the plan, understanding its purpose. Moreover, she was always aware of what was happening. Each meeting took place with her knowledge and according to her script, and then everything was discussed in detail. Ethan didn't find this humiliating, especially since it reassured him about his beloved's intelligence and insight. I hope it doesn't bother you that I continue this relationship. I assure you, it brings me no pleasure, he said after such discussions. Stop it. Don't be silly, Maria laughed. I understand everything, and I know it's all for our future. I guess you wouldn't like it if I started a similar game, but I hope that thanks to the success of our enterprise, I won't have to do that. Ethan was startled, but when he mentioned that Lily was expecting a quick wedding, Maria became serious and thoughtful. Then she said in an unusually severe tone, "This must be avoided. I'm not really interested in it. I don't want it at all. But think carefully. Why else would we need all this?" Ethan was surprised. Everything can be done without marriage and without Lily. She explained. Then the plan to eliminate the girl began to be discussed. Maria was suddenly pushing him toward this decision earlier. And although he might have been horrified at first, he soon calmly thought that the only way out was Lily's death. Realizing this made meetings with her even less tiring, and there didn't seem to be any major sin in what he was about to do, especially since Maria had said, "Don't waste words." I understand that, Maria. But how can I inherit everything if I'm not legally her husband? Ethan was perplexed. I don't want to disappoint you completely, but I see you've decided to do this. Or do you really want to marry that woman? If so, say so without hesitation. I don't mind, but remember, I don't get involved with married men. That's my principle. Sorry, she replied coldly, not trying to convince him of anything. No, Maria, of course not, murmured Ethan. So what are we talking about? She raised an eyebrow in surprise. I'm talking about something else. If I'm not married to her, how can I inherit anything? Ethan's mind didn't grasp this. And how long do you plan to be married to her to inherit her fortune? 5 years or 25? No, of course not. But how long would I need to be married for that? He had no idea and thought about eliminating his wife almost immediately after the wedding, but Maria explained the impossibility of that situation. I don't know how long it takes to inherit, but a year is clearly not enough to avoid a prison sentence. A year, Ethan? You want to be with her for a year while I act as the lover of a married man. Meeting him secretly? I've already said that's not part of my plans. So you'll have to hurry up so you don't end up in prison without any inheritance at all. Can you imagine how the investigators will dig when they find out that a young, newlywed rich woman left a significant inheritance and died suddenly? They'll investigate everything thoroughly, and no money will save you. Think about it. As for everything she had, leave that to me. I'll find a solution. I work with her and no more than she or anyone else. No one will suspect anything. Maria assured him she could handle everything. All he had to do was one simple thing. Mix what Maria had provided into Lily's food or drink. Don't worry, it's a foolproof method. No autopsy will show anything, and there won't be an autopsy. I'll take care of that, she said. With her by his side, nothing was frightening. Everything was clear and simple. It was foolish to be afraid. With a woman like that beside him, he felt no fear. Everything went as planned, and he had reason to be proud of how well he played the part of the grieving fiancé in front of the investigator, who didn't ask too many questions. After all, why bother a man who wanted to get married but had his fiancée, a young, beautiful woman, die suddenly for no apparent reason? There was no reason to sympathize with someone like that, and it seemed he would gain nothing from her death. So why question him? But as a grieving fiancé, he didn't fail. Sometimes he even felt offended that he couldn't brag about the success of the plan he had executed so well. You can't just go up to someone and say, "Look how well I handled all this." Only Maria understood well. They had done everything together. She was the brains behind it, but he also played an important role. No one could say that he stood on the sidelines while his beloved took care of their future. That was what he thought as he looked at the photo of the mound where Lily rested forever. He felt pity for her in a way, yes, though it could also be seen in another way. He didn't so much destroy her as perhaps save her from the troubles that awaited her with a character like hers. If not him, Ethan, maybe some other opportunist would have gone after her wealth, leaving her with nothing. What awaited that girl? And what would she have been left with besides youth and beauty? Moreover, her beauty was the type that would fade quickly. She also wanted children, not just one, but preferably more than two. She had mentioned it. How would she fare after the third child? And she was too confident, too naive. People would deceive her at every step. It was clear that living in peace and contentment with such a character was unlikely, and she wasn't prepared for any other life. An only child of a wealthy man, obviously, she was used to everything first class. But her father had died, so no one was there to take care of her, especially now that she was alone. So yes, it was a pity, but what could be done? The most important thing now was for Maria's plan to succeed, so that Lily's fortune could be easily acquired. Ethan didn't yet know exactly what Maria planned, but he trusted her. He didn't know it while thinking about it, but the prematurely deceased Lily was already sitting in the investigator's office, preparing a statement against him. She refused to go home until everything was clarified, and Mark had to take her to his small apartment, which he shared with his mother, Helena. Lily and Helena met and grew close. Helena felt great sympathy for the orphan girl in such a terrible situation, and Lily found in Helena an older friend she could trust. Mark's mother also believed the criminal needed to be exposed as soon as possible. Tests were conducted, and doctors had already determined the cause of the girl's poisoning. The relevant report was included in the case. Mark took Lily to the police as a witness, and soon all those involved in the crime were being interrogated, including Ethan, shocked by the unfolding of his successful plan. Under the weight of the evidence, he had to confess what he had done. The only thing he concealed was Maria's involvement, partly because he still loved her, but also because she was his only close person. With friends and acquaintances distancing themselves and no more relatives, Ethan was alone, and no one else wanted to deal with him after what he had done. Who else but Maria would support him throughout all the years in prison? And perhaps she would find him after his release. If that happened, there was hope that he wouldn't stray from her. If Maria were also implicated, he would be completely alone, so he didn't even mention her name. She remained completely distant from the crime, but her anger was uncontrollable. Yes, she was grateful to Ethan for not betraying her, but failing in such a plan. He must have miscalculated the dose, but even so, something could have been done. It wasn't just him. Maria failed in every way. First, she expected that after Lily's death, she would not only inherit the entire fortune, but also the company. She had the power to make that happen and had already invested a lot of money to make the plan come to fruition. Secondly, she expected to finally stabilize her personal life. Yes, she was a little older than Ethan, already in her 30s, and every woman knows that this is a significant milestone. Then Ethan appeared in her life. He was exactly the type of husband she could only dream of, docile, obedient, and eager to be controlled. The kind of man every ambitious businesswoman desires. They would have lived happily ever after, and he would have been grateful to her until the end of his days. And now, no husband, no money, no company. So much effort was put into it. All because of who? That spoiled girl whose only merit was being born with a silver spoon in her mouth. It's not hard to get everything with a father like that. Maria, coming from nothing, had to fight her entire life to achieve something, and she fought and succeeded. But now look, that girl couldn't even die properly, even with help. But Maria wasn't going to give up. She decided she would still take revenge on her rival, ensuring she ended up with nothing. Of course, Lily had no idea about these plans. After fully recovering from what had happened, she was happy like someone who feels reborn. She had not only been threatened, but also had been on the brink of death. And now she was alive. She could enjoy every moment, every sip of water. Moreover, she found a family for the first time in a long while. Lily and Mark talked a lot, sharing their stories, which inevitably led them to fall in love. Discovering that Mark was studying economics, she convinced him to leave his unpleasant job as a gravedigger and join her company. She needed a reliable assistant, especially since there was clear discontent in the office that sometimes caused serious problems. Mark agreed, especially since the salary offered was much higher than what he earned as a gravedigger. Additionally, Lily offered a substantial advance, which finally allowed him to pay for Helena's surgery. He wanted to refuse, but Lily said, "Please, Mark, understand that I'm not doing this for you but for your mother. I've come to love her. She's become dear to me. So why not help her? Even if you refuse, the surgery will still be done." Mark didn't argue. He wanted his mother to be well, but he also wanted to succeed at work. So, he dove deep into the complexities of the business. He did this discreetly and efficiently, without drawing attention. No one could say that the boss's new boyfriend was there to cause trouble. If anyone suggested that Mark was hired only because he knew the boss or had been helped in some way, he would have resigned immediately. However, no one mentioned this, as his colleagues recognized the young man's hard work. He was the first to discover Maria's plans, realizing she intended to harm Lily and possibly take full control of the company's assets. Upon making this discovery, he immediately exposed her actions. Moreover, he uncovered her involvement in all the events. This wasn't surprising. The company's employees, if they didn't know for sure, suspected that Maria had some connection with Lily's ex-fiancé. It might not have been a romance, but they clearly interacted a lot. Someone even hinted that they were related, but Mark understood that this wasn't the case. It seemed that the head of the department wasn't so interested in Lily's money, but rather in taking revenge on her for something. He confronted Maria directly. "I know you were somehow connected with Ethan and probably knew about his plans, maybe even participated. Isn't it enough that you've ruined my reputation and that your lover is trying to fire me with a tarnished record? But now you're also trying to implicate me in criminal trouble. What I had with Ethan is none of your business, and you won't be able to prove any of your suspicions. And if you decide to speak out, remember, I have means to strike back." This threat seemed so weak and desperate that Mark simply smiled. "All right, calm down. I won't talk, and I know very well that it will be impossible to prove anything unless your lover decides to come clean. But that doesn't seem to be the case, as he still has plans for you. But know that your guilt in the sabotage attempt has already been discovered, and you'll have to deal with it for as long as necessary. I'll give you time, but we'll see how you handle it. You're Don Juan. Do you think you can continue relying on the fact that you saved Lily by accident?" Mark didn't even pay attention to this angry accusation and left the office. Maria was quietly dismissed, but her reputation was tarnished for a long time, perhaps permanently. Mark was promoted to her position, but to take over as department head, he needed to complete his studies. However, this didn't worry him. He was happy. He and Lily were in love and planning to marry after he graduated. Moreover, his mother had undergone successful surgery and was recovering quickly. So, for people who had faced such a traumatic experience, things were going very well. In fact, they were great, and the future promised only happiness. As for Ethan, things weren't going so well for him. He was convicted and sent to prison, where he would face many years. Lily wasn't the only one who underestimated him. Maria, astute and enterprising, also did. Although he was a dedicated gambler, his luck was scarce most of the time. He tried to improve his financial situation initially with Maria's help. However, he quickly realized she didn't have much to offer and turned his attention to Lily, young, confident, and much richer. Everything went according to plan for him. He was about to realize his dreams, especially getting rid of his debts. Who could have imagined that Lily would prove so resilient? He should have been more careful, maybe should have influenced her more. Now he was in prison. Although it was a terrible situation, he felt a certain relief. I mean, sure, it was bad, but at least he was protected, at least temporarily, from creditors. However, he discovered that prison wasn't complete isolation. The same creditors had influence there, especially in the underworld. Shortly after the trial, a serious underworld figure approached Ethan again, transferring his debts to him and demanding payment with the debt doubled. "How can I pay while I'm here?" Ethan protested. "That's your problem now," was the response. "If you want to serve your sentence in peace, pay. Otherwise, don't worry. No one will kill you, but you might face consequences, as life here can become quite difficult." Ethan thought quickly and found a way out. The next day, he approached the same man and declared, "I have no money and won't be able to get any, but I know where you can get a lot more." He provided information about Lily's assets, knowing exactly where to find money and valuables. He laid out a detailed plan and wished them good luck. "I hope everything goes well for you, because I have no other plans and can't create money out of thin air," he said with a touch of audacity. This information about Ethan was passed on to his accomplices, who were still free. They attacked the house again. This time, Mark thwarted their plans. Not as a gravedigger, but by frustrating the criminals once again, literally burying their plans. They managed to steal some things, but the most valuable items remained in the house. However, Mark was seriously injured, shot, and taken to the hospital, needing a blood transfusion. Lily expressed concern about Mark's health. "So, what's the problem?" she asked. "Blood transfusions are routine now, and people live longer afterward. The problem is his blood type is very rare. Unfortunately, we don't have any at the moment. We're searching, but time is against us," the doctor replied. Lily offered herself. "But I have the same blood type. Why not me? I'm willing to do anything to save this man," she cried. She awaited the examination to see if she could donate blood without risks. The doctor who examined her shrugged. "I'm sorry, but where do you plan to donate blood?" "You're pregnant," he said, shocking Lily. "It's quite obvious now, and it seems you're several months along. Didn't you notice earlier?" Lily looked at her belly and realized the doctor was right. She compared dates and signs, understanding that Ethan was still present in her life in an unexpected way. She was carrying his child. Determined to save Mark, Lily found other donors for the blood transfusion. Mark recovered quickly. Lily was happy with the successful operation, but worried about the uncertain future alongside the man she loved in a way who had tried to kill her. Her pregnancy became more evident each day, as if the child had been hiding until then. Distracted by recent events, Lily hadn't been able to monitor her health. Her thoughts were interrupted by a visit from Helena, who had just recovered from surgery in the same hospital. Helena didn't know about the events involving her son Mark. When she learned that he had narrowly escaped death, she was relieved. She visited her son, and during their conversation, a nurse interrupted to scold Helena for leaving her room without permission. During the conversation, she mentioned that Lily was in the hospital, worried about Mark's condition. Helena was shocked to learn that Lily was there, especially when the nurse said she seemed close to the doctor in charge of her delivery. Helena felt a mix of emotions, thinking back to the past when a wealthy man approached her in a difficult moment in her life, resulting in the death of his wife and child during a complicated childbirth more than 20 years ago. Determined to find Lily, Helena needed to understand these events, which brought up painful memories from the past, leaving her agitated. Helena worked simultaneously in his company while dealing with a difficult romance that didn't work out and coping with the loss of her parents and brother, which left her deeply shaken. Her boss approached her with a peculiar request. "Helena, I know your difficulties, and you know mine," he interrupted any gesture of condolence from her side. "I have a proposal for you. You're young and healthy. I'm completely alone and need a child to replace what I lost. I propose that you have a child for me. Do you accept?" Helena refused, finding the request completely insensible. She even thought her boss might be a bit unbalanced by grief, but he was serious. The conversation continued, and in another meeting, he offered a substantial sum of money for the birth of the child, something Helena desperately needed at that time. Her parents and brother had passed away a few months earlier, leaving her completely alone and in debt after the expensive treatments. In short, she agreed. That's how her daughter was born, whom Helena saw only during childbirth. By agreement, she wasn't even allowed to breastfeed the child. She hoped to somehow care for the daughter, not as the boss's wife, but perhaps as a nanny. However, He immediately told her she would never see the child again, and the secret of her birth had to be kept forever. Her daughter's father was William Mace. Now, Helena rushed to the attending doctor's office to find her daughter and finally reveal the secret of her birth. Knowing that Lily's father had passed away, there was nothing left to hide. Lily needed to know her real mother. The encounter was emotionally intense for both. Lily was especially shocked to discover that Mark was actually her brother, even though they had already started developing feelings for each other. She confessed this to Helena, who began to cry again. "Well, I think I should tell all the secrets. He's not your biological brother, but my adopted son." "Yes, that's how it happened. I refused to have a child and ended up adopting another after giving birth to you. I couldn't find a moment of peace, knowing I would never see my little daughter again, and it tortured me. Moreover, by fate or karma, I became seriously ill right after your birth. I had surgery, and the doctor said I couldn't have more children. I even wanted to take my own life. A disobedient neighbor who lived nearby gave birth to a boy around the same time as me, Mark, and that's what saved me. I took care of him, even breastfed him, but then she wanted to send him to an orphanage, so I adopted him." "Is your son his, Mark?" Lily cried. No, he's not. That's why I haven't gone to see Mark. I'm ashamed. We fell in love with each other, but at the time, I didn't know I was pregnant, and now I'm showing with a belly. What will he think? He won't think anything bad. Think for yourself. I raised someone else's child. And so what? A child is a child. Besides, you're young, and you'll have children together." At that moment, Mark cautiously stepped into the hallway, holding onto the wall. He hadn't heard the conversation, but seeing his mother and his beloved, he smiled broadly. "You two conspiring again? I know all your secrets." Then he noticed the changes in Lily's appearance and fell silent, not knowing what to say. Lily lowered her head, turned, and began to walk away, ready to leave forever. She felt she had done everything she could. She didn't have the right to impose someone else's child on her beloved. "Wait, what are you doing?" Mark and Helena exclaimed simultaneously. Lily stopped, turned. "Forgive me, Mark. I think you understand everything, but you need to think about it. I'll accept any decision you make." "Wait, hold on." The young man started to go after her, but his mother held him back. She had something to say to her son, perhaps reflections on the past, or perhaps about true love, which led him to call Lily that same night, saying he couldn't live without her and her child. "But that's not your child," Lily reminded him. "I wasn't yours either before we met, and now it's different. Everything is different now. Now you're more dear to me than anyone. But still, this is a child. Why do you think that when I see the baby, I wouldn't be able to love it as much as I love you?" Mark tried to explain his feelings. "And you will?" she asked, her voice trembling with happy tears. "Yes," Mark smiled. And soon after, Lily gave birth to their child. He completed his studies, and they got married. This story is a powerful reminder of the importance of living an honest life, valuing truth, relying on the people we love, and maintaining hope and resilience even in the most challenging moments. The actions we take, both good and bad, have consequences, and it's essential to act with integrity and compassion. I sincerely hope you enjoyed the story. I'm sure the next video appearing on your screen will also move you. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, give it a like, and activate the notification bell so you don't miss our upcoming videos. A big kiss, and see you in the next story.